It's a cocktail of emotions. The puns that cracks up the family. Greed that yields power and a hunger for success. Trends turn to falls. Survival for the fittest is the drive.
Who are we blackmailing?
But nothing beats the feud in a family where one disappears and another fights for the crown.
It was not supposed to go this far.
It's the desire to succeed that keeps us going, the deception that keeps us digging, and the laughter pill that keeps us living.
Seeking to have the House resolve to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 3 of National Assembly from 7 days to 4 days. And this is pursuant to the House Standing Order number 20 that has listed a number of bills that will only be, or rather its publication will be done within 7 days, other than any other bill whose period is 14 days. In this standing order, number 120, Part C indicates that the bill, together with the memorandum referred to in standing order 117 on memorandum of objects and reasons, has been published in the Gazette as a bill to be originated in the National Assembly. And unless in the case of a division of revenue bill, the county allocation of revenue bill, an appropriation bill or a supplementary appropriation bill, a finance bill, a county government's additional allocations bill, an equalization fund appropriation bill will be under 7 days during its publication. And in the case of any other bill, will go through publication in 14 days. So in this case, the supplementary appropriation bill is one of the bills that are listed in the standing order that its publication will be within 7 days. But the chairperson for Budget and Appropriations Committee will be seeking to have the days be reduced from the 7 days or the stipulated 7 days to 4 days. And this is a bill that once the procedural motion has been approved by the members of the National Assembly, then the bill is lined up to be read for the first time. This is a bill that seeks to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the 4-year on the 30th of June 2024, and to appropriate the sums for certain public services and purposes. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Dr. Moses Wetangula, is in the chambers. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Mheshimiwa, tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umetoa nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala haki wa wanadamu, tukusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tunakuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikisha mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao wamezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Ring the bell.
Well, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Dr. Moses Wetangula, has directed that a quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes. And this is pursuant to the House Standing Order number 34, that at the commencement of the House or of a committee, the whole House shall be 50 members. So the number that is currently inside the chamber is not 50. And that has necessitated the call for a quorum bell by the Speaker. Of course, this is to alert the members who may be within the precincts of Parliament but yet to make the way to the chambers to be able to speed up and get to the chambers and join their fellow members already in the chambers for the House to attain that required number of 50 members. And as you can see, that is what we will be seeing members getting into the chambers once the number is achieved. The sergeant at arms who are keeping tabs with the numbers of the members who are in and those who are walking in, then once the quorum is achieved, they will be alerting the clerk, and the Speaker will be calling the House to order for the commencement of the House business. But what we will be seeing now is that members will be getting into the chambers until that number is achieved. And this is pursuant to the House Standing Order that if the quorum is not present at the commencement of the House business, then business cannot start unless and until that number is achieved. Looking at the business that is lined up for consideration at the National Assembly sitting this afternoon is that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 3 of the National Assembly, a bill that is lined up to have its publication period reduced from 7 days to 4 days in a procedural motion by the Chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee, will be read for the first time on the National Assembly floor. And this is a bill that makes provisions for giving statutory sanctions for public expenditure for the year ending on the 30th of June 2024 on the basis of the Supplementary Estimates 1. Remember, the supplementary estimates have already been tabled of expenditure 2023-2024 and the Supplementary Estimates 1 of expenditure 2023-2024. One is on the recurrent and the other one is on the development and for the appropriation of those amounts. This bill is lined up to also proceed to second reading as well as third reading at the committee of the whole stage. So the quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over back to the proceedings.
I don't see any of the whips on either side.
I think, Honorable Speaker,
you assured the House,
yes,
as an office, that at the beginning of every session, all your chairmen or chairpersons of committees must be in the House, because their numbers alone constitute quorum. When you add on the vice chairs, we have more than enough members. What has happened?
Honorable Speaker,
majority?
Yes, I think, Honorable Speaker,
Can you reassure the House?
I want to reassure the House
that commitment, because
that we have
it is very unkind to the Speaker to allow him to come and sit here helplessly as we continue ringing the bell when you have enough members, even without whipping, to whip themselves to be here.
Honorable Speaker, it's very unfortunate that this thing is happening, and as you said, we have the numbers, especially chairs and vice chairs, and I think I want to be very categorical that they have lacked sense of responsibility.
And it's not that you don't have choices, you do.
Yes, we have choices, and I think, Honorable Speaker, I can assure you, as we approach the next session of Parliament, we'll crack the whip on our chairs and vice chairs so that we ensure that as we come back after recess, we do not have this kind of a problem.
Thank you.
Also embarrasses us as leadership.
Yes. McLeod, the speaker doesn't need any help on this. Take your seat. Take your seat. Clerk, call.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Moses Kirima. Honorable Moses Kirima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I beg to petition this Honorable House on behalf of one Mr. Gerald Mulikiru, a citizen or a resident of Central Imenti. Mr. Speaker, sir, I, the undersigned, on behalf of one Gerald Mulikiru, residing in Central Imenti constituency, drew the attention of this Honorable House to the following. That through a letter dated that 1st January 2025, one Mr. Gerald Mulikiru was wrongly terminated by Absa Bank, formerly the Bankrate Bank of Kenya Limited. That Absa Bank claimed that in the course of duty, Mr. Gerald Mulikiru incurred a loss of Kenya shillings 149,000 Kenya shillings, which was borrowed from him by the then retail manager in the same bank. That on the spot, investigations done on 30th November 2004 by the senior retail manager revealed that Mr. Gerald Mulikiru and a shortage of only Kenya shillings 366 and 10 cents. That Mr. Gerald Mulikiru launched a trade dispute with the Minister of Labor and Social Protection, who recommended that he be reinstated without loss of benefits or breaking years of service, be paid 10 months gross salary as compensation for the wrongful or unfair termination, and any other relief the management would deem it fit in a judgment dated 7th February 2008. That the petitioner is a victim of witch hunting, discrimination, intimidation, nepotism, and malice. That the matter presented in this petition is not pending before any court of law or any other constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioner prays that the National Assembly, through the Public Petition Committee, inquire into the dismissal of Mr. Gerald Mulikiru by Absa Bank, formerly the Bankrate Bank of Kenya Limited. Recommend that Absa Bank considers reinstating the petitioner without loss or breaking years of service, and makes any other recommendations or action it deems fit in addressing the plight of the petitioner. And your petitioner will ever pray. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Kirima. Daud. Honorable Daud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the petition by Honorable Kirima regarding Mr. Gerald. Mr. Speaker, the amount involved is so petty that somebody can have a mistake in the daily accounts, the ones he receives in the bank. And I think the Absa Bank should have been more considerate with Mr. Gerald and should unequivocally reinstate Mr. Gerald with his benefits, because 361 shillings difference in the takings should not be a reason to be dismissed. So I join Honorable Kirema in this petition.
Atandi, you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me first of all thank Gerald for being courageous enough to bring this matter to this House. Honorable Speaker, a lot of Kenyans working in private sector, especially in banks, suffer a lot under some of these conditions that are humiliating, and they are unable to raise these matters because they fear that if these matters come to the limelight, they will never be able to get jobs elsewhere. Because in the financial sector, once you are deemed to have been fired in one bank, you can't get a job in the next bank. So, Madam Honorable Speaker, this is very courageous of him. And Honorable Speaker, the committee that's going to look at this matter must do thorough investigations. Madam Honorable Speaker, this is the only country where international companies can easily fire locals without even any action taken on them. And this happens every day, Honorable Speaker. So this is the time this House also looked at another aspect that we don't look at very seriously, where international staff working in banks, international banks, doing jobs that can be done by Kenyans. You find an expatriate coming here to do a job which can be done by Kenyans, and we don't take this matter serious. So, Honorable Speaker, let the committee go deeper into this matter and investigate many other cases of this nature. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next order. Sorry. I've not committed the petition. The petition is committed to the Public Petitions Committee to report back in 60 days, as is required under the standing orders. Is the chair here? And buy a job. It's your job. I'm not asking you to say anything, but you can see. Yes. And the order paper is normally circulated. The chairman knows that matters relating to their jurisdiction are coming, and they are not here. Next order. Inform your chairman for public petitions and encourage members. Honorable members, we are not trying to be hard on you. It's your duty to be in this house. You are elected to be in this house. And I can tell you, you are truly here for all my years in Parliament. The Speaker found me in Parliament. When the Speaker left, I followed him when he's leaving. Every single day. And it never affected my election back home. So don't say that you are in the constituency when you are supposed to be in the house. You must be here. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 21st November 2023. 1. Legal Notice number 186 of 2023 relating to revision of the laws, Rectification Order 2023, and the explanatory mandatory from the Office of the Attorney General. 2nd, Annual Report of the Victim Protection Board for the financial year 2022-2023 from the Office of the Attorney General. 3. Quarterly Economic and Budgetary Review Report for financial year 2023-2024 from the National Treasury. 4. Annual Report of the National Land Commission for the financial year 2022-2023 from the National Lands Commission. 5. Annual Audited Report of the Kenya Industrial Property Institute for the financial year 2021-2022 from the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. 6. The biannual report on the status of alcohol and drug abuse control in Kenya, 17th edition, covering from the period of July to December 2022 from the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. 7. Reports of the Auditor General on financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2023 and certificates therein in respect of the following: de-risking, inclusion and value enhancement of pastoral economics drive project, Enable Youth Kenya program, Samata Wajia Road project, Merile Marsabit Road rehabilitation project, East Africa Skills Transformation and Regional Integration Project, State Department for Roads, and lastly, Honorable Speaker, Africa Environmental Health and Pollution Management Project, EHPMP. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to lay.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Before we call the next order, honorable members, allow me to acknowledge in the Speaker's gallery, I wish to introduce to you a delegation of 6 staff from the Department of Official Reports in the Parliament of Uganda. Honorable members, they are on a visit to the National Assembly to learn about the production of timely and accurate verbatim reports of the proceedings of Parliament in the Directorate of Hansard and Audio Services. On my behalf and that of the National Assembly, I welcome them and wish them fruitful engagement during their stay in the country. Thank you. In the public gallery, we have University of Nairobi Students Association Nyanza chapter from various constituencies and various counties. Again, on your behalf and my own behalf, we welcome them to the House of Parliament. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The member for Mandera South, Honorable Abdul Haro.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 33-1, I seek leave for the adjournment of the House for purposes of discussing a definite matter of urgent national importance regarding the current severe El Nino crisis and its devastating effects, particularly in Mandera County. Honorable Speaker, the adverse effects of the El Nino crisis are significantly impacting a lot of critical facets of our country. The rains are disrupting the ongoing national exams for students with potential long-term consequences on the education and future prospects of students. In Mandera County, numerous schools are also being utilized as refugee shelters, posing challenges to both the displaced individuals and the educational institutions involved. Some vital healthcare facilities, including hospitals, are submerged, rendering them inaccessible. This has unfortunately left the affected population without access to medical assistance in the wake of dangerous outbreak of diseases. Honorable Speaker, it is disheartening to note that private individuals have had to step in actively to engage in rescue and relief efforts, underlying the urgency and the gravity of the situation. The current death toll stands at 46, with over 14 reported injuries, and the potential for further casualties is imminent if immediate action is not taken. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek leave for adjournment of the House to discuss this matter of great national concern with a view to exploring possible and long-lasting solutions. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Do you have the requisite support? The support is overwhelming. Honorable members, you may take your seats. You may take your seats now. Honorable member for Mandera Central. Order, honorable members. Order, Honorable Bowen and your group. Honorable members, I direct that having garnered the requisite support numbers, this motion of adjournment will be moved at the end of the business at order number 12 or at 5:30, whichever comes earlier. Are we together, honorable member? At the end of the business at order number 12 or at 5:30, whichever comes earlier. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Next.
Order number 8, procedural motion, reduction of publication period of a specified bill.
Chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to move that, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, that this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill National Assembly Bill number 71 of 2023 from 7 days to 4 days. And Honorable Speaker, the essence of this, as members are aware, there is nothing much happening in regards to government, and that is affecting actually this House just like any other agency of government, because when there is process like the one we are undertaking now for supplementary estimates, as members are aware, the system of government, famously known as IFMIS, usually does not operate. And the reason for this, Honorable Speaker, is usually because some of the effects we are making on the budget, some MDAs could proceed, for example, to expend the monies probably which have already been proposed for cuts. So the essence of actually locking, in quotes, the IFMIS is usually for tidiness of government financials, because the process we are undertaking now is to vary the budget. And we cannot now be expending the same monies that we are varying. So the essence of this motion is for us to be able to conclude the debate in regards to appropriations bill today, and henceforth then conclude the matter of supplementary estimate, so that then we can free up resources to go into our CDF, to go into our roads, to go into our water, for Parliament to operate, and any other government agency. And Honorable Speaker, I request the very eloquent member for Kirinyaga, Honorable Jerry, to second.
It's an eloquence here.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to second, and I thank my very good friend and role model to many of the young politicians, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, the member for Kiharu. Honorable Speaker, indeed, we need the country to be able to operate, and I am seeking that once this is done, Treasury releases the funds with immediate effect so that we can get back to work. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Njeri. Honorable members, I now propose the question that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, from 7 days to 4 days. Is that the mood of the House? I'll now put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, from 7 days to 4 days. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Order. Honorable Mwenje, before we declared you whip, you are fighting to sit on the front bench. Now that we have done so, you've shifted to the back bench. Okay, next order.
Order number 9, the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, first reading. An Act of Parliament, a bill for an Act of Parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the Consolidated Fund and the application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2024, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Supplementary Appropriations Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, second reading.
Chairman, Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to move that the Supplementary Appropriations Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023 be read for a second time. And Honorable Speaker, as members are aware, Last week, we robustly debated the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in regards to the supplementary estimates. And therefore, I'll just highlight just but a few of the issues that are already here in this supplementary, in this bill, of the supplementary appropriations bill, that is supplementary 1 of 2023. And Honorable Speaker, I was able to appraise the members of the fact that the essence of this supplementary budget that we are currently debating today and hopefully conclude by end of this session, the reason why we had to do this supplementary budget at this time is primarily hedged on only three things. One of the critical things that we are doing in rearranging government financials in this supplementary estimates 1, the main thing was the repayment of interest rates of the obligations that we owe both domestically and externally. And Honorable Speaker, as members are aware, we passed the budget, the main budget in June, but from June to date, there has been dynamics across the money markets. And the money markets are the ones that affect the cost of money. One, Honorable Speaker, is that we have seen a rise or increase in interest rates here locally, as we have seen increase in foreign or global interest rates. And Honorable Speaker, most of our foreign debt is dollar denominated. And even to start with the global figure about our debt, is that Kenya, give or take, has around 10-point-something trillion Kenya shillings in debt. And out of which 50% of that debt is foreign. Most of the foreign debt is dollar denominated. Honorable Speaker, from January to date, our local currency, the cash, has lost over 21%. And therefore, in consequence, what that means is that around 4.3 trillion Kenya shillings that we owed by the beginning of this year has been able to escalate to around 5.3 trillion, majority of which is not money that we have borrowed, but just the variations in our local currency in regards to the dollar, which is a denomination that is used in most of our borrowing. And therefore, the essence of the monies that we are enhancing is basically to be able to provide for that. 145 billion Kenya shillings in this supplementary budget is going to just enhance the payment of our interest rates, both domestically and also in terms of foreign debt. Honorable Speaker, some members, and it's important that I clarify. Why do we have to keep up on raising our interest rates as a country? Why is T-bills now having much more yield than they were having in June? Honorable Speaker, when we are looking at the economy and looking at something we call balance of payment has two components. One is in the current account that records the net imports, that is the X minus M. But then there is another one that records capital inflows minus the capital outflows. Now what happens is that when the other global interest rates are rising, if the current or the domestic interest rates does not go in tandem, then what happens, Honorable Speaker, is that we make other economies more attractive for investment. And that is why Kenya cannot be isolated. When the global interest rates are rising, Kenya also raises so that we can also attract capital inflows within the country. That is one of the reasons we had to raise or to increase our budget in this supplementary budget. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, is that when we are doing the budgeting for a country, we use financial years. That is from June to June. But when the country is doing other arrangements, for example, education, we do that cognizant of the calendar year. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, one of the other reasons that we did this supplementary budget in regards to figures is that we needed to capacitate our education sector by capitalizing it more. So what we have done in that regard, Honorable Speaker, is that we have added but over 70 billion Kenya shillings into our education sector. Honorable Speaker, it is important that I let the members know that our education sector currently is taking up 700 billion Kenya shillings of our budget, which is commendable, Honorable Speaker, because these are monies that are going into the tomorrow of our country. And Honorable Speaker, this is an investment. Honorable Speaker, out of that money that is going to education, 5.4 billion Kenya shillings is going into JSS capitation, because we are adding much more money into JSS so that parents do not have to cough money out of their pockets come January, and especially for those who will be joining JSS in January. Honorable Speaker, secondly, we have been able to add over 20 billion Kenya shillings into our higher education. Honorable Speaker, we have capitalized our help more to be able to give loans to higher education students and also to provide scholarships to higher education students and especially universities. Honorable Speaker, also we have added over 5 billion Kenya shillings into our TVETs. This money is going into payments of scholarships also to TVET students. Honorable Speaker, there is something I also want members to put a keen listening ear on. Honorable Speaker, in education, and Honorable Speaker, is important for members to note, we have added an extra 3.4 billion Kenya shillings into JSS infrastructure, that is laboratories, and that is other infrastructure related to JSS. And something we have done is that we have moved this money from the Ministry of Education. In this appropriations bill, if you check, 3.4 billion Kenya shillings we removed from the Ministry of Education, and we took that money to the Department of Planning so that that money goes to NGCDF for these members of this House to manage the construction of JSS infrastructure. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, we have been able to add 1 billion Kenya shillings. You know, Honorable Speaker, Nairobi is our capital. Whether we come from any other area of the country, from Murang'a to Taveta to Marsabit to Iraret in Marsabit or any other area, Nairobi is still our pride as our capital. But Honorable Speaker, Nairobi County has the highest number of school-going children who have no access to education. So what we have done in that regard is that we have added Nairobi County Kenya shillings 1 billion, monies that will go into enhancing infrastructure in our primary schools and secondary schools within Nairobi, because statistics in the Ministry of Education is very clear that Nairobi County is much more disadvantaged when it comes to infrastructure, and that is why many school-going children are not able to access education. Honorable Speaker, the third thing that made us have this supplementary budget is primarily the domain of our economy. The domain of our economy is that Kenya is still agrarian in nature. Honorable Speaker, agriculture employs the bulk of the Kenyan citizens. Actually, in rural areas, 70% of the residents in rural areas are employed by the value chains around agriculture. And Honorable Speaker, what we have done is that we have added 8.25 billion Kenya shillings into fertilizer subsidy for the next season. Honorable Speaker, we have also added monies for NCPB to mop up maize, Honorable Speaker, and we have also added monies for post-harvest management when it comes to maize, because we are expecting a bumper harvest as farmers are harvesting. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we were able to add more money that will go into that. Secondly, within agriculture, I have good news for the areas that are represented by members here of Kenyans who do sugar farming, because we were able to add, Honorable Speaker, close to Kenya shillings 2 billion into sugar reforms. And these sugar reforms, Honorable Speaker, number one is to help our factories to be able to procure sugar cane using sucrose level. But also number 2, we have input over close to 1.5 billion Kenya shillings into payment of arrears of sugar farmers who are owed monies of sugarcane that they have already provided. Honorable Speaker, we also have good news for farmers of Kenya who are engaged in coffee production, because we have added Kenya shillings 4 billion into coffee farming and specifically into coffee cherry fund, so that the farmers of Kenya who do a marvelous job in terms of balancing our payments, Honorable Speaker, to be able to produce more coffee, and that is why we have recapitalized the coffee revolving fund, Honorable Speaker, with Kenya shillings 4 billion. Honorable Speaker, there are much more that we have been able to do in these supplementary estimates, because we believe that a country that is run by people is dynamic. And therefore, the budget that we made in June, a lot has happened. And therefore, we just needed to align the government resources to be able to go into areas that we deem have very high or are much more effective in terms of turning around inputs into outputs. And Honorable Speaker, agriculture has been seen to be a part of that. As I come to the conclusion, it is important, because budget making process affects the entire economy, that I highlight one area that members have been asking. Members have been asking, why is our currency decimated? Why is our currency on the receiving end in regards to other global currencies? Honorable Speaker, for the last 11 times that the Federal Reserve has met, that is the Federal Reserve of the US, they have consistently been raising interest rates. In January of 2022, the Federal Reserve rate in the US was in the band of 0% to 0.25%. They have then raised interest rates for 11 consecutive times, up to now the band of 5.25% to 5.5%. How is that related to the Kenyan shilling? Honorable Speaker, what has happened? When the US raises interest rates, there is capital flight from all the other emerging economies like Kenya and the rest. And therefore, we have seen a lot of capital outflows from emerging economies like Kenya. Of course, the investors going into the US, where they don't need to worry about currency devaluation. Honorable Speaker, the second thing is the regime of the central bank. Honorable Speaker, the central bank has 3 critical areas that it needs to do other than regulation of the financial institutions. And the critical role of the central bank is to set prices. And there are 3 categories of prices. One, there is prices of commodities, which we call inflation. Then there is the price of money, which we now use interest rates. But then there is the price of the domestic currency, which is forex or exchange rate, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, the regime of the central bank affects how the domestic currency or the direction it takes. For the past 6 years, we have seen in Kenya that the central bank, whereas we are known that Kenya has a floating exchange rate regime where it is a matter of demand and supply, within that floating regime, there are 2 categories. There is the managed exchange rate regime, which is floating, but also there is independent. For the last 6 years, Honorable Speaker, Kenya adopted a managed independent a managed floating regime, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, what we used to do, we could offload our dollars when we could see our shilling is weakening. And therefore, we were able to manage our local currency, although artificially. Honorable Speaker, the current regime is that of independent, so that the shilling gets its true value in relation to other global currencies. Honorable Speaker, some members would then ask, why is also the shilling losing against, for example, the UGX, the Ugandan shilling, or the Tanzanian shilling? But Honorable Speaker, if you check the economic data of the Ugandan shilling versus the Kenyan shilling, the Tanzanian shilling versus the Kenyan shilling, you realize we are at the same level we were during Kibaki's time, around 2010 or thereabout. Why? Because now when the shilling finds its true value, then it is able to relate with other currencies independently. And Honorable Speaker, that is the main reason that we have seen some devaluation in the Kenyan shilling as it fights its grounding in an independent floating regime. Honorable Speaker, with those many words, I really want to thank all the members of this House. The Budget and Appropriations Committee always benefit greatly by listening to all these members. The majority of them even come to my office. They give me a lot of guidance and counsel, and therefore the work that we do, including the one of supplementary budget, is the collective wisdom of this House. I also want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, to thank the leadership of the House, of course led by our clerk, the leadership of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and especially to cite one director called Dr. Maside. There is a very important people, Honorable Speaker, who have been by my side all through, and they are here. There is Dr. Abel and Julie, and there is Dan. And Honorable Speaker, by coincidence, I went to Kenyatta University, and almost all these economists are from KU, Honorable Speaker. Including, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Majority Leader of this House and the Chairman of ICT, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure those who never got an opportunity to go to KU, they can still do a postgraduate something around that institution. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to call upon the member for Oljororok, very effective member of our Budget Committee, to second this motion.
Proceed, Honourable Member. Give him a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you. That is KU in action. Honourable members. Honourable members, and order McClap. Honourable members, I now propose the question, which is that the Supplementary Appropriations Bill number 3, National Assembly Bill number 71 of 2023 be now read a second time. Honourable members, I want to give you some direction. This is literally a replica of the committee report. And I want us to agree how much time we want to spend on this. In my thinking, if the screen is full, contrary to my earlier advice, if we'll have some debates, it's now 3:15, I will allow short debate up to 3:45. Then we can, how much time do you want everybody to take? 3 minutes. Irene Mayaka, I've called you to speak. I see you on the screen. You have 3 minutes. At 3:45, I'll call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I hear someone asking me for my school. My school is the University of Nairobi, the only university with that there. Honorable Speaker, in regards to this particular bill, the appropriation bill, I want to stand here to just make a few remarks. And Honorable Speaker, I will be very brief because for me, the one area that I really have a concern for is R1017. where we have sought to increase the amount allocated to State House to a whopping 2 billion. And Honorable Speaker, I keenly listened to the Chair of Budget when he was giving us his remarks in support of why it is 2 billion. And I remember him mentioning that the reason for this is that the head of state would like to have more meetings in State House, including building a pavilion. But Honorable Speaker, we are experiencing extraordinary times, which means we need to make extraordinary decisions. And for me, if we must have meetings, then why don't we have online meetings? For example, why can't we have a Zoom meeting where the head of state can have Zoom meetings so that we even save more money? And for me, Honorable Speaker, I feel that this amount of money allocated is a bit too much. And the one area that I really want to support is the area of the diaspora. Diaspora has been allocated an approximate amount of 1 million. And for me, I feel this is an area that needed to have a bit more money allocated to them. And the reason for this is because we have a lot of investments coming from the diaspora people out there, and we need to capacitate and actually have proper infrastructure to make sure that we have actual data of which Kenyans are these that are in the diaspora, how much money are they making, how much taxation is coming through. But if you are allocating very little money towards this infrastructure, then we're not going to get the possible results. Honorable Speaker, as I finish, there's also an allocation for the Deputy President's Office. And Honorable Speaker, I listened very carefully when the Deputy President mentioned that he also wants to eat seafood and lobsters in his office. And I'm just wondering, this additional allocation, is it for these lobsters and seafood? Because if we are all making sacrifices and reducing the amounts allocated to each and every area, then we need to make proper sacrifices. It cannot be luxurious sacrifices that you are making. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I think we really need to review the estimates that we've indicated here and have estimates that actually speak to the current economic situation of this country. I thank you.
Justice Kamei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me. And I'll be very brief. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee for a job well done. When I was listening to him, Mr. Speaker, I thought I was listening to the Minister for Finance. And I tried to look around to see whether he was reading from something, and apparently he was speaking from his mind. That is the way to go. But, Mr. Speaker, I have 2 points. Number one, the increase for the Ministry of Education is well guided. We must have enough money for our JSS schools because the program that we started the other day, and it must work. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the increase in the amount of money given to the agricultural sector, and particularly, Mr. Speaker, as I come from the cane-growing regions of Western Kenya, the money that will be used to pay arrears for farmers for public-owned mills, that I want to commend the Budget Committee for that decision. Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit worried about the cane testing units. And I want to find out, Mr. Speaker, of these cane testing units which have been put in various sugar factories in the country really working? We must ask the question because we are giving about 400 million for cane testing units, Mr. Speaker. I want to beseech the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and my chairman in Agriculture to find out whether these cane testing units are working. And finally, Mr. Speaker, he spoke about Kenyatta University. If that is where economists are produced, I'm also an alumni of the University of Wales, the School of English Studies in Cardiff. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Onchoke. Charles Onchoke.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. We are having a supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, against the backdrop where the country doesn't have a medium-term plan. One wonders how we can manage our economy without a medium-term plan. We are 11 months into the year without a medium-term plan. So the numbers, Paul, you are talking about are flying all over the air. Mr. Speaker, listen to the chairman of budget talk about our economies. It's good to compare ourselves with the other economies, but it only goes as far as to give direction on how we need to manage our economy. The fact that the Federal Reserve has increased the interest rates of the USA for a number of times is not a reason for Kenya not to manage its economy better. Thank you.
Yes.
It's no reason for Kenya not to manage its economy better. We are in a situation where the interest rates are high, and the reason why our shilling is depreciating against the international strong currencies is because our imports are falling short of, our exports are falling short of imports. In other words, we are consuming more imports than exports. Why are our exports falling short of imports? The reason is our main exports like agriculture, tea, coffee, horticulture are falling. Why are they falling? It's because the Kenyan...
Your time is up. KJ. And you are not Nairobi, you are KJ, member for Dagoretti South.
Mr. Speaker, you got that very right. And an alumni of the great Kenyatta University, where I have great company in the plenary. I'm in the company of the greats like the Honorable Chair for Finance, the Honorable Chair for Budget and Appropriation, and many other greats, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to first congratulate the Budget and Appropriations Committee for burning the midnight oil and delivering this supplementary budget on time. What needs to be spoken, Mr. Speaker, because we can't go into the details in 3 minutes, is the style and manner in which the BAC approached budgeting this year. Mr. Speaker, the involvement of members of parliament and especially the chairs of committees was something unprecedented. We have to commend the new style and approach that has been adopted by the Finance Committee that is very inclusive and very considerate of the issues that are coming out from the members. As a member of parliament representing a Nairobi constituency, Mr. Speaker, we do appreciate that in this budget we have been able to put in 1 billion Kenya shillings, monies that is being transferred into the planning ministry so that it can be appropriated through the CDF so that we can expand our primary schools in this city. Mr. Speaker, the primary schools in Nairobi have come to a state where some of them have been condemned as unfit for human occupation. Some schools that last were attended to in the era of the Nairobi City Commission. Some were attended in the era of the Nairobi City Council. Some were attended in the eras of Mayor Margaret Kenyatta. This is the time, Mr. Speaker, that we get the opportunity to bring up some of these schools up to standard. Mr. Speaker, the investment in the digital space is also commendable, Mr. Speaker, that the digital economy and the ICT sector did get a small boost with an improvement of the monies that have been appropriated to this sector. So, Mr. Speaker, I do call upon members of parliament to take the opportunity and honor the pledges that they made at the Kamkunji that you convened so that we can have digital innovation hubs in each and every single ward of this country. These digital innovation hubs, Mr. Speaker, are impressive. The few that have already been put up are already converting learners into earners. Young people who are walking into our TVETs, getting the digital literacy skills, getting trained on how to be able to work on online jobs and earning in dollars. Mr. Speaker, I will want to end it here by associating myself with the words of the chair that KU does produce brilliant minds, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Masinde and the other lady who has been supporting this committee are well known to me as extremely brilliant minds. And Mr. Speaker, there is a case to be made for the generational conversation that the people who are running the economy of this country, Mr. Speaker, are of a certain average age. When you look at the chair of budget, look at the chair of finance, Look at Daktari and the people who are working. This is a generation that needs to make its mark, akin to the generation of the Mwai Kibakis, the Kenneth Matibas, the Martin Shikukus, who are able to bring up a Kenya that was so brilliant in the 60s and the 70s that it was recognized all over. We are seeing a situation where we are bringing up leaders of a new generation that will make this country the envy of the people around this region, in the East African region, the envy of Africa and the envy of the world. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate this opportunity to contribute to this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Joseph Oyula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to also support the supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, I start by congratulating the chair of the Budget Committee for being very eloquent in his presentation of this supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, as much as I support the increases and the adjustments that have been made, I would want to ask the Budget Committee to start thinking towards the reduction of there's an increase in the deficit. We should start thinking about the reduction of the deficit. Let us now start looking at a balanced budget. I know it is not something that can be done easily, but let us put our minds of bringing the budget, the deficit down, so that Kenya is also seen to be doing its operations in a more considerate manner. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to thank the budget chair and encourage him to start looking at the reduction of the deficit in the future. Thank you.
Beatrice Kamei. You're on the screen. I see you exclaiming. Are you ready for this?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to first thank the chair of this budget and appropriation and his members for the work well done, and to also appreciate the fact that he went to Kenyatta University. Those are great brains. I also went to the same university. So I'm here to appreciate this budget. Now, when it comes to the side of agriculture, I was trying to look at the tea sector, and I was wondering how much has been added to it, but I am made aware that the side of fertilizers is where the tea farmers will benefit from. For the coffee, 4 billion is good money, and the reforms will support many of our coffee farmers. Kericho, we have coffee, and the farmers had left coffee because the payment was very low. With this increase, I am sure coffee farmers will smile all the way to the bank. But I feel more money should have been allocated, Honorable Speaker, to tea farming. Milk, Honorable Speaker, the new KCC, having been added 1.5p, is very, very important. And I know many of our farmers will benefit from that, small and large-scale farmers. For the education sector to have 70 billion is a great achievement. We are investing for today and tomorrow. And I appreciate this committee for that, Honorable Speaker. Not to forget that the money allocated to affirmative action, which is more on the sanitary towels, will be a plus now that it is domiciled not in the side of Ministry of Education, but in affirmative ministry, gender ministry. I appreciate that, Honorable Speaker. So with that, I say this is good, but I believe when it comes to implementation, it will be done to the later, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Zamzam.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kutoa sauti yangu katika makadirio ambayo yameletwa hapa bungeni ya nyongeza. Niweze kusema kuwa naunga mkono ambayo imeongezwa katika elimu, katika mambo ya usalama, mambo ya afya na mambo ya ukulima, kwa sababu ukulima ndio uti wa mgongo wa taifa hili, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na kama ilivyo hali yetu imekuwa tata katika taifa hili, uchumi umekuwa mbaya, upande wa wakulima wakiongezewa itaongeza uzalishaji na ile economy itapanda juu, uchumi utakuja juu, na imani baadaye rais wetu waweza kupunguza sasa zile task ambazo zimekuwa zikitujia kila wakati, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, pia lazima niangalie upande mwingine, nikiangalia ile bajeti ambayo umeongezwa katika Ikulu na ile ambayo imeongezwa katika naibu wa rais, Mheshimiwa Spika, naona hiyo kidogo ingewachwa mahali ilipo, kwa sababu mwanzo ilivyowekwa kwanza kulikuwa na utata, Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakipunguza lakini pia waweze kuongezea huku kwenye afya, kwenye ukulima, kwenye usalama na kwenye elimu, Mheshimiwa Spika, itagusa nyoyo za wananchi wengi na itaweza kumpa hata umaarufu zaidi katika uongozi wake, itaweza kutuliza nyoyo za Wakenya ambao wanahangaika kwa wakati huu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo upande wa bajeti mimi naweza kusupport katika sehemu hizi 4 ambayo ni ukulima, usalama, elimu na mambo ya education. Lakini upande wa State House, Mheshimiwa Spika, samahani, mimi kama mama county naona pale ibaki vile ilivyo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Thank you. Ferdinand Wanyonyi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to add my voice on this supplementary budget. First and foremost, I want to thank the the chairman, for at least allocating resources to areas that actually are need. I particularly, Mr. Speaker, and I've asked him and he's just told me, confirmed that agriculture today is a shame that Kenya, being a country on a tropical area, is actually a net importer of food in this country. Something that we must take it very seriously. I want to find out how much money has been given to agriculture, because, Mr. Speaker, we are embarrassing ourselves. How do we import food? How do we import maize in this country? It's because I think we have not taken it very seriously, but I hope the supplementary budget, and I want to look at the figures, that we actually be able to have more money put in agriculture, get irrigation equipment in these areas that actually need irrigation. I can be able to buy some more equipment so that during the dry season, we can be able to irrigate areas to be able to produce enough land, enough food for this country. I want to agree that he has put some money, but whether it's enough or not, I think is something that we want to sit, and I've just talked to my chairman here, we have to sit down and look at it and be able to see if we can get enough money to be appropriated into agricultural sector of this country. It's a shame that we import food. Now Kenya is a net importer of the food, which is not something, Mr. Speaker, that is very embarrassing. With those few remarks, I support the supplementary budget, and I hope the chairman will look at it critically to be able to look at that, can be able to see what he can do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Bowen.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the supplementary budget. And congratulate my good friend, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. He's bragging about Kenyatta University. At the time, during our time, the Kenyatta University was a school of arts and education. It was a college of education and arts. Mr. Speaker, the Jomo Kenyatta University, and we are many of us here from JKUAT. We are many. So, Honorable Speaker, let me support this appropriation bill and commend the committee of Ndindi Nyoro for the good job. Mr. Speaker, the only issue I have, especially as a chair of Blue Economy and Water, Mr. Speaker, if you check the northern Kenya and the coastal region, Honorable Speaker, which is very bad, partly affected by the floods. Mr. Speaker, those regions, as we speak, there is no even drinking water. And if you see from the budget which the Honorable Ndindi has just tabled here, there is very little allocated to those regions to address the issues of El Nino and the floods. Mr. Speaker, I appeared before the committee to present the case of these regions, and I don't know how much the Honorable Chair has given, because, Mr. Speaker, these are people currently, they are not even asking, they are not talking about coffee, they are not talking about maize, they are not talking about fertilizers, they are talking about livelihood, drinking water for them and their livestock. Mr. Speaker, many of us who are pastoralists, I'm talking on behalf of the pastoralists now, Mr. Speaker. In this budget, Mr. Speaker, we have seen there is a significant amount of money allocated for coffee, for tea, which we have not even seen. I thought initially, Mr. Speaker, tea was supposed to be like fruits because I had not seen a tea tree. So, Mr. Speaker, I want when we do a budget, we do a balanced budget for the entire country to make sure that every Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, because all of us, we are taxpayers, we make sure that there is a balanced budget which touches across the economy of this country, including us, the pastoralists. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of security, Mr. Speaker, last week, Mr. Speaker, we approved our men in uniform to go to Haiti. And Mr. Speaker, if you come to regions like Kerio Valley, where I come from, the northern Kenya, the Turkana, that side, there is no security. So I was seeking that in this budget, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro's committee and the also Treasury allocate enough money to address the issue of insecurity in northern part of the country and also the Rift Valley. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, from the budget I've seen from the Honorable Chair, it's generally a good budget and I support, but I'm only telling the Chair next time when we are going to supplementary 3 or supplementary 2, they reach the parts of Kenya which he has forgotten in his budget now, he makes sure that it is addressed properly. And as we proceed, Honorable Speaker, also to approve this appropriation bill, the supplementary one which we passed in this House, we have not seen the exchequer. We have not seen, there are projects at that time when it was approved, many government agencies went to advertise projects and some contractors went to do some work, but that exchequer has not been released up to now, and we are talking again, passing supplementary 2. Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, go back to Treasury and speak well your economics. I had minus X, minus M, which you talked here. We don't want the minus X, we want to see the real figures in people's, yes, the real money in Kenyan pockets.
Karole Omondi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I'm actually waiting for the next order, if it could be expedited. Thank you.
Now you are falling victim of my direction. If you are not speaking to the order on the floor, try as much as you can to get yourself off the screen so that we can be able to... Atandi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I support the motion as presented by my able chairman. Honorable Speaker, in this supplementary budget, the House has allocated sufficient resources to the security agencies, Department of Defense, NIS, and the general security of the country. Honorable Speaker, my prayer is that after this bill is passed, that the relevant agencies will do their best to address the question of insecurity in the country. Honorable Speaker, there is criminal gangs are running amok in this country. Honorable Speaker, yesterday, criminal gangs in my constituency attacked police officers who were guarding exams. And they were able to kill one police officer and injured another one. And went away with the guns. As we talk, 2 guns are in the hands of criminals in Siaya. So, Honorable Speaker, this is something which this House needs to take note of, and the security agencies have no excuse from today, after this budget is passed, not to be able to address insecurity challenges across the country. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Maklap.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I rise to support the Honorable Chair for budget on this S1, supplementary 1. Mr. Speaker, I have listened carefully, and I've also gone through the budget, the supplementary 1, that 1.8 or thereafter billion was allocated for compensation of farmers or payment of farmers that were not able to, the state-owned sugar factories were not able to pay them. Mr. Speaker, I support the payment of farmers because they are suffering and they supply their gain. But the problem, Mr. Speaker, is we have actually sanitized corruption. What about the people who stole that money that the government is paying now? What has happened to them so that they can be able to replenish? Because other taxpayers are now contributing to the mess of some individuals who ran down those factories and made away with that money. What action are we going to do so that as majority of us of Kenyans who are not sugarcane farmers are actually contributing to sort out a mess of individuals who are now scot-free? Mr. Speaker, I support the payment of farmers. Coffee, 4 billion to support coffee farmers. I have not seen something of tea. I have not seen something to support restocking of pastoralists, because now El Nino is when pastoralists will be able to raise a number of livestock that have been lost through drought and rain. Mr. Speaker, where is something for us? Those of us who come from the pastoral economy, who want to do now restocking, because we lost the majority of our animals in drought and in banditry, Mr. Speaker. We need this country to be equal. We need fairness in Kenya. As we do coffee in those places that grow coffee, we sort out farmers in those places they grow sugar. We also need to sort out farmers who grow tea. We need to sort out farmers who actually raise livestock for survival, Mr. Speaker, in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I also want to congratulate my chairman here for sorting out 6.3 billion for security, for modernization of security. But Mr. Speaker, that modernization of security should not just be the police. That modernization must also go to the NBRs of Kenya, who are actually cutting community interests and their lives, Mr. Speaker. Modernization of NBR is required so that they have the right gear and the right weapons to be able to combat with crime that has already exceeded police force, Mr. Speaker. And finally, Mr. Speaker,
your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, just one. Mr. Speaker, I agree that going forward in this country, we need a balanced budget. A balance. During Nyachai's time, I was not in Parliament. There was a time Nyachai brought in a balanced budget, revenue equal to expenditure. Mr. Speaker, during Kibaki's time, we financed our budget at a deficit of only 5%. Going forward, so that we don't sort out a problem caused by Bretton Woods institutions like World Bank and IMF, we need to move forward and swallow the bill and do a balanced budget that will be able to sort Kenya, and we don't go to the crisis of debt repayment and even increasing supplementary because of things that we don't have control as a nation. So, Speaker, I rise to support.
Mover.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I want to take very little time in replying. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank all the members who have said something about this supplementary budget, and it's important that I mention so that I also reply to their concerns. Number one, on Honorable Irene on State House. Honorable Speaker, I explained that in the second reading of the report. And the fact of the matter is that State House had not been given enough money in the main budget. And we did that consciously because there were more pressing needs. So we are just reinstating the budget that they never got in the first place in the main budget. Secondly, on diaspora, the 1 million shillings is an addition. You know, Honorable Speaker, this was a budget to cut. So they should actually be very happy that there is an addition, because most 90% of the institutions of government or MDAs actually lost money. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of education raised by Honorable Justice, we have already added more money to education. It was actually the highest gainer after the payment of interest rates. On Honorable Nchoke, I agree on the issue of interest rates and Forex, that they have a big effect on the amount of money we end up paying our interest rates. Honorable Speaker, on Nairobi schools, as was highlighted by the chair of ICT, Honorable KJ, there was a clear need, specifically because land in Nairobi is very expensive. Well, we are expending our CDF monies in the other areas. The land we may purchase to build a school is relatively cheaper when you are not in Nairobi. And that is why Nairobi was considered, so that we have a semblance of equity also in our city. Many times you see the city of Nairobi, we see good roads, but there are very many informal areas and Kenyans who need our assistance. Honorable Speaker, I want to commend also Honorable Beatrice Kemei on the issue of milk. We have actually added more money to new KCC because we need them to mop out or to mop up much more milk, and especially as Kenyans know, when it rains, we have more production of milk. And what happens is that the prices fall. This money is to mitigate that drastic fall in milk prices and as far as the farmers are concerned. Honorable Speaker, there is an issue that has been raised by many members on whether there is actually money for flood mitigation. Honorable Speaker, in the Department of Asals, there is around 6 billion Kenya shillings we put for emergency. In fact, this money is donor-funded money. So what we do is that the government of Kenya allocates exchequer money or domestic monies, and then every shilling we spend, we get reimbursement from World Bank. So when it comes to flood mitigation and assisting Kenyans who are victims of floods, there is sufficient money, Honorable Speaker, that we have put in this supplementary budget. Honorable Zamzam, thank you very much. The money for security is there. Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, and the chair for agriculture is here, he can confirm, Honorable Mutonga, that this supplementary budget, the third gainer is actually agriculture. Agriculture in all respects. In terms of inputs, Honorable Mutonga has been a very good chair of that committee.
Yes, order. What is the point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the chair for budget in order to mislead the House by telling us that money has been allocated for El Nino and other disasters, when in the book we can see only money for capital expenditure, nothing for disaster. So where is he reading from? Whatever he's saying. We know that 22 counties are affected by disasters. So he should not speak to himself. He should speak to the House on what is table on the floor, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Chairman, wind up.
Honorable Speaker, I want to request my brother, Honorable Sani, that with very much due respect, because he's a very, very important member of this House, I could pinpoint to him where the money is after this. There is Kenya shillings, 6 billion shillings for emergency. And you know, such a matter is not a matter to come to and talk before this House and before these honorable members on issues that are not there. It is so important a matter that no one should play politics with. So there is money that the government of Kenya has already provisioned for disaster management. And as I said before, there is monies expressly to be spent from the domestic sources, but there is also money for donor funding, Honorable Speaker, and that money is there and intact. Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with Honorable Ferdinand that agriculture is very important. And Honorable Mutonga, who is a very, very good chair of that committee, can confirm that he was actually smiling all the way in our committee. When the other chairs came, wailing because of the cuts, Honorable Mutonga was one of the gainers in the Committee for Agriculture. And we have done money or allocated into inputs, into value chains, and also all the way into post-harvest management. I want to also agree with Honorable Bowen Kagongo on all respects. Equity. Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker, there is money for coffee farmers. There is money for tea farmers, because agriculture money or fertilizer money also incorporates tea farmers. There is money for cashew nuts. There is money for new KCC, majorly taking care of the pastoralists and the dairy farmers. So the entire Kenyan map is actually in this supplementary budget. Honorable Speaker, also, in terms of security, we have added 6.3 billion Kenya shillings into police modernization, and that money will go a long way into assisting areas that are facing challenges. I also want to agree with my brother, Honorable Atandi, who is a very committed member of the Budget Committee, and as you saw, Honorable Speaker, also, he's doing very well in Alega Usoga, because he's among the best performing MPs also in Kenya. And all the issues he spoke about around security, we have already allocated monies so that our country can be secure. Honorable Makilap, I want I think I've already answered most of it in terms of emergency and restocking.
For cases, what is the problem?
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. With due respect to my senior brother, Chair for Budget, he has enlisted monies meant for agriculture, enlisting critical areas, that is coffee, tea, milk. But being the House of Record, Mr. Speaker, it would be very important that the farmers who are doing maize at the moment should also get to know what is the provision for maize, because we are at the harvesting period, and being the House of Record should also be mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I had already mentioned about maize farmers, but because the Honorable Member for Keses shares the same name with the President of Kenya, I will repeat that we have 8.25 billion Kenya shillings monies for fertilizer subsidy. Most of these monies is for maize farmers. Secondly, there is money for post-harvest management. In fact, part of the items that were already passed under Article 223 are monies that went into the purchase of dryers. Number 3, Honorable Speaker, we have put some money for arrears of farmers who never got paid by NCPB in previous years. And Honorable Speaker, and I hope now Honorable Ruto is now satisfied. We have also put money for NCPB to mop up
so
money.
He's cheering what you are saying. He's satisfied. Wind up.
I am winding up, Honorable Chair. We have also put money into NCPB for them to buy excess maize from our farmers so that we can have a granary that is full as a nation. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I wish to reply.
Honorable members, I now propose the question, put the question rather, that the supplementary appropriation number 3 bill, National Assembly Bill number 71 of 2023, be now read a second time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and the application towards the service for the year ending on 30th June 2024, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes. Order number 11, Committee of the Whole House.
Order, honorable members, may you be upstanding.
Honorable members, you may be seated. We can begin. Honorable Kangogo, what is your point of order? Even before we begin.
And it has given a definition of livestock as cattle, camel, donkey, pig, sheep, goats, and poultry. Mr. Speaker, we are giving counties an opportunity to harass their citizens. Just imagine what will happen when a county askari come to your home and you have not branded your cows. They're going to confiscate them. What if they come and find your poultry, which you're supposed to have registered and brand them? They are not. Probably we are giving them an opportunity to harass the already harassed residents of our counties. Mr. Speaker, I was thinking, and of which this is the part whereby we give our views so that now the sponsor of the bill can see what to do. The issue should only be directed to abattoirs, the slaughterhouses, that you should never slaughter an animal or a cow without the registered or registration, either certificate of whoever is selling that vehicle. What do I mean that animal? What do I mean by that, Mr. Speaker? That before I sell my cow for slaughtering, I should first of all now at that particular time be required to register so that there is documentation at the slaughterhouse, whereby if I want to know how many animals were slaughtered today, I go to a slaughterhouse and they can give me documentation. But we should not make it mandatory, because if I have 2 cows, maybe they are just for a cup of milk, and especially in central Kenya, let me talk about Kiambu County, that we do not have this issue of cattle rustling, Mr. Speaker. So I think we should not make it mandatory. Let's make it voluntary. If you own cows and you want to protect them, go register yours. If you feel you are in an area whereby you're going to lose your cow for whatever reasons, you register that particular moment. Now, Mr. Speaker, when the county registers your animals, what other services are they giving you? Why are we telling them to register? For what reason? Are they helping you in fighting banditry? Are they helping you to protect theft? So why are we telling them just register? We're supposed to tell the county, I'm giving you my money to register my cows. Help me protect them. By doing what? We are in an era of technology, Mr. Speaker. If you have 1,000 cattle, you can use GPS tracking, Mr. Speaker. County provide that to several cows randomly, so that when they are stolen, they will easily be tracked, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, something else that requires to be done is education, because we need to change the mindset of our people. Cattle rustling was there between the Kikuyus and the Maasais in the 1800s and the beginning of 1900s. But it ended, Mr. Speaker. We need to do a research why it ended, Mr. Speaker. Instead of reinventing the wheel, my grandfather used to tell us they had to encourage intermarriages between the 2 communities. And probably it works. I'm not suggesting that now, but if it worked, it can work again in those communities that are doing whatever they are doing, Mr. Speaker. They also encourage reserve and farming. You have to farm for your animals, for them to get pasture, Mr. Speaker. So I think what we require is not necessarily a law to the farmers, a law to those who are keeping animals, Mr. Speaker. All we need to do is whoever is dealing with the animals at the slaughterhouses is the one who is supposed to be told, you cannot have an animal that does not have registration. That means they will never slaughter anything that is not registered. And then at that particular time, the owner of the animal should register before they sell. But if you're not planning to sell, why do I have to register my animal? Why do I have to brand it? Why do I need it? Maybe I have only 2 cows. So I implore my good friend, Senator Gerard Gay, that what this law is requiring us to do, or counties to do, is to provide logbooks for animals. That is what he's saying, is that every animal should have a logbook, so that when you sell, there is a sale agreement, it is moving from this place to another, but it should be voluntary so that you guard your animals. It should be, the burden should be left to that particular person who feels threatened. You go and register your animals, you brand them, you color them until you feel that you are protected. But if you give it to everybody, this will give an opportunity for the counties to harass people. Finally, Madam Speaker, the bill is giving, has prescribed what should be done when you're found transporting cattle without licenses. You'll be jailed for a time not exceeding 12 months. It's talking about if you're dealing with animals and you have not, you're slaughtering animals whose background you don't know, up to 20 years in jail. That is what we are supposed to be implementing, so that whoever is dealing with animals, Madam Speaker, will always want to find the background of that animal. Just like we do with vehicles, before you buy a vehicle, you have to check. We leave this burden to the slaughterhouses to be checking with the county government, is this registered, so that I deal with it. Otherwise, let's remove the burden to the owner of the animals. And with that, I think we should first of all try this in the counties where cattle rustling is prone, Madam Speaker. And I would suggest in the amendment, we remove some of this livestock like poultry, because now branding, I'm trying to imagine branding a chicken. I'm trying to imagine you have a chicken for about 45 days, from 1 day old chick to 45 days when Ken Chick and the others are coming to buy it. Yet the bill is talking about 30 days you should register, you apply and then wait for 30 days. So, knowing how counties work, I believe we remove poultry from this category. Let's first of all deal with cattle. If it works with cattle, we introduce all the other animals. Because I have not had pig rustling, I have not heard of that. So let's deal with cattle for now within the counties that are prone, or this menace is rampant, Madam Speaker. So with that, I support, we will be bringing amendment on that issue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Hezana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to support this bill on the prevention of livestock and produce theft bill 2023 by the Honorable Senator Gerard Gay of Nandi County, one of the most brilliant senators we have in this house. Madam Speaker, I feel that this bill will go a long way in tackling banditry, and I also like that most of it are suggestions on what should be done. I believe that we have a lot of corrections that need to be done, especially on the branding and the movement of livestock, but my problem will be with the destination of this livestock. Madam Speaker, when you talk about the northern counties where banditry is very prone, we are not talking about stealing of 2 or 3 cows. We are talking about the theft of a huge flock of livestock, especially last year we had an incident where almost 1,000 herds of cows were stolen in Samburu County and they disappeared into thin air. And Madam Speaker, I like to redirect my attention to the Kenya Meat Commission, because a lot of this livestock ends up at the Kenya Meat Commission. And they are usually the commission that is responsible for meat products, and a lot of export in huge quantities. Madam Speaker, I would like if this bill addressed particularly the movement of livestock into the Kenya Meat Commission, and that way we'll be able to tackle the origin of this livestock. We'll be able to know where they are coming from, and ensure that we don't have livestock stolen from the pastoralist communities moving into the Kenya Meat Commission, because they are dealing with a huge number of incoming livestock. Madam Speaker, I would also like to remind Senator Cherargei, my good friend, that in some of the pastoralist communities, and I believe also they have in their Kalenjin community, the traditional branding of livestock. I, for example, come from the clan of the cows that lick fire and sleep on hot metal road. That is the bravest clan of the Samburu County. And that is identified by fellow Samburus or people from Marsabit by the traditional trademark of our livestock. Because in the Samburu community, we brand our cows as per the clans. My uncle, Senator Lelegwe, also has his own brand. But my branding of traditional cows is done by a hot metal rod, and it moves from one side of the mouth down to one side of the arm. That's why they say our cows lick fire and sleep on hot metal rod. Madam Speaker, I would like to urge my colleague Senator Cherargei to ensure that this bill comes up with a way to harmonize the traditional branding with the branding that he is recommending, because that way then, you see, in some areas around these pastoralist communities, people live also according to clans. You find that this clan lives on the highlands, the other one lives by the river, the other one lives on the dry parts of Samburu, and each clan lives in their own way. So if cows move from one side to another, the community is able to identify that these cows were moved from this side of the county to this side of the county. And also, if there can be a harmonization among these communities to create a positive embrace and awareness among them, such that we know how the Turkana community brands its cows, how the Pokot community brands their cows, how the Rendile and Borana community brands their cows, we are able to identify personally and individually, even before buying, that these particular cows were coming from this direction to this other direction. Madam Speaker, and to summarize that, I would also like to know if, to see this bill tackling, or rather speaking about the hefty punishments for the people that are caught in possession or transporting livestock that do not belong to them. I would like to know that these punishments are very clearly and meticulously outlined. Madam Speaker, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Senator Joe Nyoto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to support this bill that, though I've not had a lot of time to go through it, but Madam Speaker, this is a very progressive bill. I think I must start by saying so, because the problems that we have been having with stealing of livestock, and it's unfortunate that Senator Mofaya is out. He had indicated that those of us that live in areas where we do not have banditry do not encounter these problems. But Madam Speaker, stock theft is present anywhere in Kenya where people keep animals. In our place, it's even worse, Madam Speaker, because you'll find these very bad people stock thieves, getting a dairy cow from somebody's shed and slaughtering it. Sometimes they will slaughter even cows that are in calf, Madam Speaker. And so this is not something that affects only areas where we practice nomadism, Madam Speaker. I'm encouraged very much about the identification of these animals, although, Madam Speaker, I'm also worried. What happens to an animal that is stolen at night and slaughtered the same night? Because even if it had an identification mark, even if it was registered, then we get a problem. However, Madam Speaker, looking at the bill in other later sections, there is also registration of carcasses. And that is why I feel compelled that this is a very good bill. Because the problem that we have been having, especially in our place, is where an animal or a group of animals, a number of animals are stolen at night, slaughtered at night, and meat transported to some areas, and the Bama market is notorious for this. But now with this bill, where, Madam Speaker, we will register even carcasses, I think it will be upon now our law enforcement officers to see to it that any carcass that is transported to all those areas, name them, City Market, Bama, that no carcass is transported to those market areas without the proper registration and documentation, because that is where we miss it out, Madam Speaker. And that we are also registering carcasses, that encourages me that this is a very good bill, Madam Speaker. I'm a little worried though, because the provisions of this bill provide for registration of animals that are 6 months of age and above. Although there is a proviso somewhere near the end that the CECM will come up with ways of registering animals that are under 6 months of age. Madam Speaker, I think it would be better if you can be able to make an amendment that we get also an express way, that we do not leave it to the opinion of the CECM or member, Madam Speaker, because then the theft could shift from grown animals to animals that are under 6 months of age. And so I think Senator Cheralgei will look at that and maybe see whether he can sponsor an amendment of the same bill so that we properly cover animals that will be under 6 months of age, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, going forward to look at the punishment that is prescribed for those that steal stock, I'm very encouraged, Madam Speaker, because it is 20 years for anyone who steals an animal, and that is if they did not use violence while stealing this animal. That if they use violence, because that is where I was very much interested, what happens to people, because the media is awash with news items of people, of these bandits who go kill even women, Madam Speaker, and steal animals. And I'm very encouraged once again that such a person, once convicted, will be jailed for life, because that is what we need. We need to have sentences that can deter those that plan and execute these plans of stealing animals, especially where they steal using violence and sometimes even kill people. Madam Speaker, I did not get enough time to read this bill, the provisions of this bill, but then I think we should also embark on a very serious program of action as relating disarmament of people that have illegal firearms, Madam Speaker. Because as long as firearms continue being in the hands of people that are criminal in their minds, Madam Speaker, we will still get very many problems. And of course, you know that arresting somebody who is armed in order for you to make them face the law, it becomes a very difficult task, Madam Speaker. And so I think generally talking about identification of animals, talking about controlled movement of animals, because again, people will want to say that I'm only moving these animals, they are my animals, I'm only moving them to a market, I'm only moving them for grazing to a particular place, but with marking, with control of the movement of animals, Madam Speaker, I think we shall be at a better place. And without me taking much more time, I think I support this bill because even the sentences that Senator Cherargei proposes are punitive, not only punitive, but deterrent enough because, Madam Speaker, every one of us would want to live in a country where if you are rearing animals, then you know that your animals are safe, that you know you as an owner is safe. Because as it is now, especially in some areas, Madam Speaker, both the animal and the owner are not safe. And the insecurity comes from ownership of these animals. And that is something that, of course, should not be happening in present-day Kenya, Madam Speaker. And with that and many other things, I support this particular bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Madam Speaker, I would like to, I rise to support this bill by my friend Senator Cherargei. And it is a very, very good bill, Madam Speaker, because it is addressing an issue of rustling. Now, this rustling is not only cattle rustling, it is livestock rustling. And it is livestock rustling which does not only occur in those areas where they keep large stocks of animals. It also occurs in areas where there are people with mixed farming. People who do fishing, they also keep animals. They do farming, they also keep animals. And not in such large numbers. But, Madam Speaker, they keep it in sufficient numbers to sustain and support their economic activities. Madam Speaker, these are subsistence farmers who have mixed farming. And, Madam Speaker, these things happen on a daily basis. But they are not reported nationally because perhaps it is thought that the impact on the economy of those families is not that big. But, Madam Speaker, I can tell you it is very devastating. It is very devastating when you lose your animals. Me, I lost some animals like chicken. I lost maybe 1,000 chicken. I could not feel it that much. But, Madam Speaker, if that happened to a neighbor who was keeping, that is his or her lifetime savings, and they lose 1,000 chicken, Madam Speaker, it can be very, very devastating. Can be very devastating. But how do you put these marks which Honorable Cherargei is speaking about on chicken? Or sometimes, Madam Speaker, it would be good if there was a classification, particularly when it comes to punishment, on who should be punished and how much. Because if you take those people who are coming with guns in the northeastern and in Isiolo, in Turkana, in Pokot, and in Baringo, and Marsabit and so on, taking animals using guns, using arms, and then you want to compare them with people who are using pro boxes in my area, where if you just happen to graze your goats, and because the land for grazing is becoming limited by the day because the population is getting greater and bigger, and the land size does not increase, Madam Speaker, people come with pro boxes and they put the goats. Pro box can carry even 20 goats and they go with it. Madam Speaker, if you want to mete out punishment of somebody who has stolen 2 goats, 3 goats, or 10 goats, with somebody who has taken 50, 100, 1,000, using a gun, and even killing the herders with guns, Madam Speaker, I think this should be differentiated. There is theft, there is animal theft, and animal robbery. There is robbery with violence, and there is theft of animals. And the theft should be differentiated from the robbery. I know between my community and the community, Honorable Cherargei, there is a theft of those animals almost on any other, on a daily basis. But they don't use guns, they use arrows to come and steal our cattle and go with them to the hill. And sometimes elders sit down, they talk, and some are returned. I don't know whether Honorable Cherargei would like his people who come with those arrows to be jailed for 20 years, if that is okay. But I think theft should be differentiated from robbery. Those who kill, taking thousands and thousands of animals from people, Madam Speaker. That, I think Honorable Cherargei knows what I'm talking about, and he will consider some of these amendments which have been suggested by my colleagues before me. And, but all in all, Madam Speaker, I would like to support this bill because it is dealing with an issue which is affecting very large parts of our country, where this theft or robbery of animals has become a business. Madam Speaker, it is no longer conflict between communities fighting for resources, fighting for space, for water, for grazing land. It has become a very big business. Madam Speaker, I know that there are some people in this country who are having connections with Middle East countries. They take these animals, they take them to slaughterhouses, slaughter them, and export them. That is why very large stocks of animals disappear, even in areas like Lamu, where you have the army there. And these people travel, if you see the distance they travel from the areas where they pick these animals to those areas where they are supposed to go, it is maybe 200 kilometers, 100 kilometers. How would they transport these animals and nobody is able to recover them on the way until they reach their destinations? Madam Speaker, this means that these animals don't go that far where we think they are going. They are diverted somewhere, not very far, and taken to a place where they are quickly slaughtered and they are transported outside the country. So it is a very, very serious issue, Madam Speaker, which impoverishes very large communities in our country, and it must be taken seriously so that those who get involved themselves in such big crimes must be punished. But we should not also make the same punishment to petty criminals who are stealing chicken, who are stealing some 2 goats, 3 goats. Madam Speaker, those are thieves, and they are, there are penal codes which are there in the Criminal Act which deals with such petty thieves who steal such kind of things. There must be a differentiation of big theft and robberies. Those big criminals who rob with guns and kill people. Madam Speaker, I don't want to speak much more on this, But I want to end by supporting this and hoping that my friend will take into consideration some of the amendments recommended by my colleagues before me and have this bill passed as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mariam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the bill which brought by Senator Cherargei. The objective of the bill is very good, and the bill sorts two things at a go, that is security and the livestock keeping. Madam Speaker, the branding part 2, pastoralists have, every community has its unique branding. Maybe the bill must be clear that maybe introduce or amended branding to be the county branding, because maybe if I am ferrying a camel from Mandera to Garissa, let it be, if somebody see, let it be seen that this is a camel from Mandera. So let it be individual, specific counties. Madam Speaker, movement, part 3 of the bill. When it comes to movement of the livestock, we are nomadic, and we move everywhere to look for pasture. When it comes to now permit of movement, it might be difficult for nomadic people, which are, because this is not zero grazing. Let it be specifically for the sales and slaughter. But the option of looking for greener pasture is not be identified as, it will not require permit on that. Madam Speaker, the other one is offense. In offense is part 4. The payment offense is when you are ferrying, when your animals doesn't have registration of branding, there's offense there. Maybe if we put it as the work of the county to brand all the livestock, it will go individually to the county wise. Because if you see a county, Mandera County, livestock in another county, and it has not been branded as a county wise, is the county, that is the county government to be responsible for that. Madam Speaker, mine is just to support, but registered branding, because you have to specific for, I think I have already said on that, on the specific counties. Madam Speaker, on that, I support the bill and with the amendments. Thank you very much.
Senator Okenyuri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. And I want to support the legislative proposal by the Nandi warrior, Senator Samson Cherargei. I know even beyond having this legislative proposal, I would want to challenge Senator Cherargei. I know he does not fear anyone. One of these days in this house should name the cartels behind cattle rustling and, all these things we've been fighting since independence, because they are with us. And I know the more I continue actually talking about this, they might come for my head. Madam Speaker, it's actually assumed that the only people who keep cattle and farm inputs in large numbers are the pastoralist communities. I come from a community that practices subsistence farming. That's the Kisii Transmara border. And we keep cattle, and the issue of stealing cattle has actually threatened our coexistence, especially between us and the Kalenjin community. That's in the Kiango area, where I come from, and Magenche. Initially, we've been using traditional methods of Kisii fighters, in quotes, called Chinkororo, who have been following the footprints of the animals just to get to know where they have been taken to. But with the proposal of this bill, we are now embracing new technology, no longer using Chinkororo to track footprints of where the cattle went, because now there will be branding and marking. I don't know how we are going to ensure that the small, the subsistent people in the small compounds who are not keeping many animals, we can also get to know their information. But that would be a good step towards stopping cattle stealing and farm inputs. Madam Speaker, some of these issues are actually contributed to as a result of unemployment. So this proposal by Senator Cherargei goes a long way in addressing unemployment in this country, because we have several young people who are engaged since they lack any other source of income. So they are seeking solace in actually stealing and selling cattle. Away from these small people, Madam Speaker, we have the cartels I've actually mentioned, whom I'm actually requesting and daring Senator Cherargei to name, who are actually stealing animals in large quantity and exporting meat to different countries. I hope this legislative proposal is also going to nab such kind of people, because in this country we make so many regulations, but enforcement is a different issue altogether. The other day, sometimes I see proposal whereby you're sending a thief to catch a smaller thief. Send a thief to catch the big thief. We shouldn't want petty offenders suffer at the expense of big thieves. We know them. Several reports have been done, Madam Speaker, in the two legislative houses. Why we should actually be running away from it is a question for another day. But this is a very good legislative proposal that has been brought by the Senator for Nandi. And I know he is a man who means his word. The people of Nandi are very lucky to have such a person who speaks his mind, who is not threatened, because this legislative proposal actually threatens most of the cartels who have made our people continue being poor. This proposal is going to emancipate several people who are actually disadvantaged, and their only hope is keeping cattle or farm products. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support, and I want to say that it has come at the correct time, because, Madam Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza administration just issued fertilizer to farmers the other day. I do not expect, after farmers waiting for such a long time, their produce is going to be stolen by someone who's been sitting and watching somewhere. So, Madam Speaker, this is very timely, and this is a very good proposal. Senator Cherargei, we support you. Thank you.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support a bill by my friend Honorable Cherargei. And in fact, when it came to the Committee of Agriculture, I'm the one who chaired that day, and he was busy chairing a different meeting. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very important piece of legislation, and it will work together with other legislations. Already there is an anti-stock theft unit in the country, but it only operates as a policy, but with a policy framework, but without a law. So this law will realize that policy framework. But there is something which, in my thinking, could be added in this bill. You know that there are now modern methods of dealing, with anti-stock theft. For example, if animals have a chip, because we talked of brandy, but some brandy, Madam Speaker, may amount to cruelty to animals. Burning the skin of the animal, having to pierce, the ears and things like that. If you could also have a chip, if we use modern technology, have a chip which could identify farmers, a certain farmer and their cattle, then that will go a long way to know, even if a cow is stolen, even if it is slaughtered, it is traceable up to where it was slaughtered. It is a very serious matter, Madam Speaker. In the north, people have died, because of this. And even police try to stop it, have died. Even soldiers have died. And when they arrest or apprehend somebody who has stolen cattle or a team of people, ordinarily, Madam Speaker, there will be gunfire. And even the police, then when they overpower this particular person, they will execute them summarily without a trial, without arrest, and it ends up in a failing, to obey the Constitution, to rights of an accused person. They do not apply in this case. So, other than this legislation, how do we solve this problem? We need to engage the communities in this practice. And one way of government engaging is to make sure there is development in their counties. There is a way the livestock farmers have been settled, and they are not allowed then to wander all over the place, and such that there is communication in the event of an attack to the government, and it is easy to get these people, because these are communities who are neighbors and in neighboring counties, and ordinarily it is a matter which, even by policy, even by practice, and by what the country has already been doing, we are able to strengthen this by the law. I also find the offenses, in this act not matchy with the penalties which should be meted to such people, and probably then how could you rehabilitate such people to make sure that they are useful to the nation. Some of them do not come from the country. They come from neighboring countries. So how do you deal with international relations in that matter? And you have apprehended a criminal who doesn't come from this country, and that is likely to strain our relations with their neighbors. So we need to go a step further to make sure that the neighboring countries have an agreement of some nature, so that the people who come and steal, actually commit robbery with violence, are able to be dealt with accordingly. But most importantly, these are cultural practices, and now there is a law which has to regulate them, so that a cattle, robber knows the consequences. So there need to be communication, there need to be education to these communities, so that people are aware that now there is a new law by Senator Cheregai, which now, if you proceed with this, these are the results. Otherwise, if you look at the offenses, some of them are duplicated with the penal code or found in other acts of parliament. Although this law leads the way, as we go into third reading, we could come up with suggestions to improve it much further, and especially to match it with modern technology. But having to deal with the cultural practices, I am very sure the respective senators, the respective members of parliament from these areas, if they are also engaged and they are able to talk freely to the state, they can also give solutions, so that other than having this law, which is going to bring some order and sobriety in this business of cattle rustling, there must be knowledge to people who are useful to the country. What's the role of NSIS in this in Kenya? The intelligence should be given as to who are the dealers, and then there could be a better way of dealing with them. And when they don't follow, then the harsh law can be applied to them. They can be cracked down, and without having to lose lives on both sides. And again, unfortunately, these seem to be very well trained people. They are used to the harsh climatic conditions. So when we send our army there, or send the police there, who don't even know the geography of the area very well, it becomes very tricky. And even when the police are using helicopters, they have to fly very high, because these cattle rustlers shoot without missing, with the only bullet left. And it's a danger also to our officers. So you cannot fly so low to be able to identify, or execute or stop, you know. So there is a need to come up with a system and a law like it has been proposed now, so that this matter can be settled once and for all. But most important, the communities have to be engaged. Their leadership has to be engaged. All these people are known. There's no community with unknown people or where they stay in Kenya. If somebody is driving 1,000 cows or cattle or sheep, 1,000 is such a huge number. It can be spotted from far, and they are driving 1,000 cows for 1,000 kilometers. Are you not going through places with a chief, through places with an SEC, through places with a county commissioner? Are you not driving this cattle through places with the police and the government system and the stock theft unit? So it means there is knowledge to the communities, and because there have been cultural practices, we also got to respect the rights of these people. And this law has tried to come up with a solution. I believe it can do better. The government has also to get serious as a matter of the policy which has been there, which is now being legislated, so that it seems, you know, from the information I've gotten by Ageji, our friends, you know, from those regions, you will see the smile on their face and you know there is some information they are not telling you. Where do these people get the bullets? Where do they get the guns? How come these guns are not known, are not registered? So there is something here which has to be dealt with, so that the cultural practices are also respected, so long as they are not repugnant to justice. And again, at the same time, one of the complaints given is that government has not given education to these people, and therefore they have no other way of earning a living. Again, also, in some of the practices, getting married is a very expensive affair in terms of cows. So a young man has to go for cattle rustling to get enough cows to come and give as bride price. And because of the pressure of wanting to get married and to have a family and having to show and to prove that you are a man, you end up in this practice. You probably end up losing your life there, and you probably don't come back to your community, and that particular dream is lost. So I think it is a high time, while we have this good law, if we could amend it in a way to include, the use of ICT, the use of chips, so that you can be able to identify and you can be able to know even who was the person who bought from the rustlers and where they went to slaughter. And if we do that, because this is the same meat we end up with in the butcheries and in the Kenya Meat Commission and other places who slaughter animals, or even crossing across the country, what border policies and what international relations could we deal with? And I believe at third reading, we will sit down with the Honorable Cherengai, improve this law, and it will become a very big part of solution. I would like to hear the submissions of the respective senators in these particular counties, because they could be of bigger, they can do a bigger input into this, and they can tell us why this has been going on for years and years without stopping. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
Senator Seki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support this wonderful part of legislation from Senator Cherargei, which has come to in the right time to this House, and I want to really support, particularly on the objectives of this bill, where we are looking at the issues regarding promotion of security of the animals and security of the people themselves, registrations and management of livestock and by the livestock owners, and much more of very objective objectives in this bill. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this is a menace that has been there in the entire country, particularly on the areas where livestock farmers, particularly the pastoralists, have realized. And this bill will definitely see the light of the day, particularly for us who are staying in areas of who are keeping animals, livestock. And I want to say that the senator has really tried to look at very key areas that needs to be looked at. I want to support this bill, for it has looked at the areas where there is a big problem, where we see there is an issue on branding. I'm looking at it like the senator has really looked at the branding as a problem. And I want to support that as we solve this problem of branding, particularly on going through county by county, to try to specify each and every branding according to county governments, so that according to counties, so that each and every county has its own brand, which is known, and the policy is there. And if possible, the county governments come up with another legislation through the county assemblies, and I hope the bill will give a provision where the county governments can do more legislation or legislative provisions, so that they can, make their own guidelines on how to operate in this bill. The branding issue, as my brother Senator for Kitui has put it, we want to look at how the county governments can also go ahead and do more, or even this bill can modernize the branding issue, because the area where you just try to put even marks on the animal through the skin and ear or something like that, it is good that we do a modern electronic or ICT or whatever branding part, such that now we are able to identify a cow when it's moved or even when it is still there in the farm. This is something that really this bill needs to look at. The movement of animals is a key area which this bill has also tried to focus on. I want to support this, that we are worried because we have been seeing animals being ferried from one area to another, but there is no movement, there is no way that the government or these people who are stealing these animals can be arrested. And for it to bring this bill, to pass this bill, and talked about the issue of movement of animals from one area to another, from one county to another, it is something that this bill is looking at and try to solve these problems, particularly on the vehicles that are ferrying these animals, the kind of animals, vehicles. Probably the bill needs to know, we need to understand what are kind of animals. If it's the animals live or carcasses, what kind of vehicles do we use to ferry the animals? The bill also has talked about the area of fences, which are very much in support to it. And I want to possibly add on one area where possibly the senator, Senator Cherargei, can look at the area where you can add on as a part C or part D, on the areas where what about the carcasses? What will this bill talk about the carcasses? Particularly when you are now taking the animal to the slaughterhouse. What are the procedures that we look at when we are slaughtering these animals? Because that is where also another problem is, and where that is where farmers encounter these people taking animals and kill the animals and even slaughtering and take them there. In terms of slaughterhouses, what kind of procedures or systems do we put in those slaughterhouses? so that we are able to curb this problem. So I think, Madam Speaker, I want to support this bill and say that we are looking forward to get more views coming in, particularly on the areas of where there is more animals, particularly livestock farmers. So I think during public participation, I'm very sure my brother Cherargei will focus on those counties. And I want to say County of Kajiado is one of them because we are also very much affected. Animals are being ferried from one place to another. A lot of thefts is happening day and night. And this bill is a privilege. It's a privileged bill to livestock farmers, and in our county we do support this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Okoiti Omtata.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this very, very important bill. I support the bill, and I'll make a few remarks. First of all, the title of the bill is one I would like my brother, Senator, the Venerable Senator for Nandi, to look at. It's considering the question of theft, and yet the issue we really have in this country are bigger than theft. We have got very many issues around livestock that if we had to use a computer chip which would be carrying data about an animal, I would expect it to be an identifier for that animal, not just for purposes of avoiding theft. I would want, first of all, one thing that has really hurt us in this country has been the question of genetics, management of genetics. If you are a breeder today and you want to go and buy a pedigree, it has become very difficult to be able to trace what kind of animals are available. We have also seen the problem of inbreeding that has really reduced the size and health of our animals. With this kind of bill, if somebody had data, you could be able to guide and say, if you are buying this heifer, avoid heifer, this kind of, you can be able to look at the data of the animal and it will tell you how to manage it. We are also looking at the question of vaccinations. You can be able to look at a chip of the evidence, because it will be readable. You can know whether it has been vaccinated, and things like those can be carried on board. I would also want to know exactly how the database will be managed. As you have seen from the Senator for Kajiado, he has said the question of butcheries. How would they be handled? It's important that maybe we have got handheld devices into which the database about these animals can be downloaded in real time. And maybe when somebody arrives with an animal at a butcher or somewhere, when you go to buy an animal on the market, that handheld device can help you identify this animal, know who owns it, where it's coming from, and stuff like that. I feel that the branding should become part of the extension services that are offered by the counties for purposes of standardization. Let the animals be branded by counties, not by individual farmers. We find a way whereby the county can brand, issue the codes, standardize all that. But it's a very, very important development because there's been a lot of damage to skins and hides through branding. If you go through Maasai land today, they are very beautiful animals. But all of them have got, the ears have been chopped off, the backs have been scratched. So you look at the beauty of the animal has been interfered with just to try and help identify it. So they do a lot of cruel things to animals, which this kind of discrete identifier would help. So branding of these animals should be more than the way we do when we put a chip on a vehicle to trace a vehicle. It should not just be for traceability and identification, to the traceability to the owner. It should go more into the modern uses of animals, the modern controls, and also we can use it to penetrate markets, to show that our animals are clean, how they have been handled, the kind of vaccination they have gone through. We can then be able to penetrate the European market through being able to demonstrate that this particular animal has come through this kind of, was born here, it has come through this kind of management. If we are talking of organic, we can demonstrate it's organic from the kind of information it carries in the chip. So this is a bill that's long overdue. It's also a bill that tells us that people in this country are still thinking. Because you get sometimes to a point where you feel this country people don't think. But I'm very happy that my brother from Nandi is thinking. He has brought us very, very good bill here that will help us grow. In terms of cattle rustling, I think we have to look at the crime. It is heavily mischaracterized. It is robbery with violence. But it's passed off as a cultural event which does not attract the kind of sanctions it should attract from the state. So if we could characterize these things in a proper way and allow the police to deal with this as the crime of robbery with violence, I'm sure it will be able to disappear. But if we continue handling it with kid gloves, it's a cultural activity, it will never die. It must be called by its name. It's robbery with violence, and robbery with violence in the penal code attracts major sanctions. So these people of so-called cattle rustling needs to be given its correct name, should be called by its name so that it can be dealt with accordingly. And so this bill here for me has come at a very, very timely time, important time. I'll pray that my brother and the rest of us give it the time and attention it requires. We pour over it with the toothpick to fix it and make sure that it's able to serve this country going forward. We need to be able to register our breeds. We have the Boran today. The Boran is not benefiting us as much as it's benefiting other people who took the genetics from here and went to develop them. But because I've got a proper record-keeping system, they are able to get the premium out of this kind of animals. And so for me, nothing could be more important in terms of breeding, in terms of farming, animal farms. And also, you saw the other day, I saw a picture of the president and some fellows talking about digital IDs for human beings. Before we put chips into human beings, let us begin by putting them in animals and see how we can manage them before you inject anything in my part of my body to get a digital ID. So this would be a very good thing to begin trying and then running databases, and then we'll be able to know how this thing works. And so tomorrow when we say we should put a computer chip in the Senator for Nandi, then we can know that when you put a computer chip in the Senator for Nandi, we have got our own reasons for doing that, and it's safe and it's whatever, it's acceptable. So I fully endorse it. As for cruelty to animals, the branding has been very, very cruel. Those hot iron bars are very, very cruel. And so I hope that this thing will be passed to the speed it deserves, and that the country will rally behind it and grant it the resources it requires, and we begin dealing like people who are living in the 21st century. People who are competing with the rest of the people. People who want to go to build homes on the moon and on the planet Mars. Not just people who are busy fighting jiggers in their legs. With those few remarks, I thank the Senator for Nandi for having brought us this very, very empowering and enlightening bill, and I pray that we pass it and make it law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Ogola.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support from the onset the courageous bill by the courageous Senator of Nandi, the young, brilliant lawyer, Senator Cherargei. Honorable Speaker, the Prevention of Livestock and Produce Theft Bill 2023, Senate Bill number 12 of 2023, is a very, very progressive bill. Honorable Speaker, cattle remain the symbol of prosperity, the symbol of security, the symbol of pride, and the symbol of wealth of so many of our families in our many communities. Madam Speaker, sometimes back, in my community where I come from, the number of cattle a family had demonstrated or showed that indeed they were a wealthy family, and they then took seats at the table of pride in my community. And this can be demonstrated, Madam Speaker, the symbol of pride can be demonstrated by even now, so many years after modernization and education has come in my community. Whenever we have a funeral, Madam Speaker, and I'm not afraid of saying how proud or how wealthy that community is, of family is in my ethnic community, is demonstrated by the number of cattle that we provide as we celebrate the last rites at burial ceremonies. Madam Speaker, however, Madam Speaker, just to also demonstrate that cattle has been a sign of wealth, there are a number of families that still pride in the fact that cattle or their livestock is informal banks for them. And Madam Speaker, this is demonstrated at the time when even schools open. For people who may not have cash, but they have livestock, then they are very comfortable because their children will go to school even when they are not formally employed. Madam Speaker, I'm happy with this bill because it refers to the bill as prevention. A number of us only look at cure, but this bill is out to prevent a number of ills that are in this sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are a number of people who also, it is alleged back in our communities, that they run butcheries, they sell beef and such like. But people do not see them owning any cattle for that matter. So that points out that this sector has a number of ills, and these are the kind of ills that this bill is going to solve, Madam Speaker. And that points to the robbery, the stealing of cattle, Madam Speaker. In some of our areas, there are people who move in proboxes, as had been insinuated by Senior Senator, Senator Oburu, and they pick cattle, whether goats, rams, and I do not know how even bulls are able to fit in those proboxes. But Madam Speaker, this bill spells out a way in which this will be prevented. Madam Speaker, the only thing I want to state is that in looking at the movement of livestock, there must be decency, Madam Speaker, in some of our local markets. And because probably the traders are not able to afford more advanced movement of the cattle, you find the cattle still are transported or their movements are facilitated. They go physically from market to market in very long distances. And Madam Speaker, I think this must be addressed because it also shows a sign of ill treatment for the livestock. Madam Speaker, I'm happy that this bill spells out the role of county governments in the prevention of livestock and the produce of the same. And Madam Speaker, this will only also give some income to the counties because of the number of roles that the county government is going to play. But, Madam Speaker, as these roles are taken by the county government must also enhance the services of extension officers to this sector in order to improve also the production of the right quantities and the right quality. So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill, not only that it will prevent some of the ills, but, Madam Speaker, it will also add to the quality and the quantity in terms of the livestock and the produce that comes from the livestock. Madam Speaker, to address the issue of theft, I think, Madam Speaker, these are organized enterprises. There are people who benefit from the stealing of livestock in this country. And that has been demonstrated by the previous speakers, because how else, Madam Speaker, would we have thousands and thousands of livestock moving from one region to another without the culprits being apprehended? So, Madam Speaker, I support this bill because it's going to restore the prosperity, the pride, and the security of our communities. And, Madam Speaker, it is also going to address the criminality that is involved in this sector. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana Bi Speaker kwa kunipa nafasi hii na mimi kuchangia mawazo yangu kuhusu sheria hii ambayo Bwana Senator Cherargei anataka kuileta hapa bungeni. Bi Speaker, mambo mengi yamesemwa na sitarejelea, lakini kuna jambo moja ambalo ningependa kulisema kwa ufupi. Shida kubwa ya wizi wa mifugo ambao tumekuwa tukingangana nayo tangu uhuru, alivyosema Mheshimiwa William Cheptumo, ni kwamba ni utamaduni mbaya. Kuna tamaduni nzuri za Kiafrika na kuna tamaduni mbaya za Kiafrika. Na hii sheria ambayo Mheshimiwa Cherargei ameileta inaongelea mambo mengi mazuri, lakini kuna kitu kimoja ambacho ningependa Mheshimiwa aende akifikirie na pengine aiongeze katika mawazo ambayo ameandika kutoka kwa waheshimiwa wote walioongea. Sisi tumekuwa na kitu kizungu anaita FGM katika, yani female genital mutilation, ambayo ilikuwa inafanyika katika makabila ya Kiafrika ambayo mengine yapo hapa Kenya. Na Bi Speaker, vita dhidi ya hizi tamaduni chafu, tamaduni mbaya, zimeweza ushindi umeweza kupatikana kutokana na civic education. So, Madam Speaker, ningemwomba Mheshimiwa Cherargei aangalie section mpya katika hii sheria kuhusu civic education. Watu wetu wakaliwe, wafundishwe, waambiwe mambo haya ya kuiba si mazuri, na waambiwe hii sheria itakushika vile vile ambavyo inafanywa kwa upande wa kukeketa wanawake. Kumewekwa mpaka bodi, Bwana Speaker, Madam Speaker, kumewekwa mpaka bodi ambayo inahusika. Kumewekwa hasa watu ambao wanatembea, kumewekwa champions ambao wanaongelea kuhusu ukeketaji. Ningependa hii sheria nayo itengeneze bodi, itengeneze champions katika counties ambao wataweza kutembea haswa kwa zile sehemu gatuzi ambazo ziko na hii shida. Watu wawekwe chini, watu waelezewe kwamba utamaduni huu haufai kwa miaka hii ambayo tuko nayo. mbali na hizi mambo mazuri ambazo amesema, lazima tugeuze akili ya wananchi wetu. Tusipofanya namna hiyo, Bwana Spika, tutawafunga watu wangapi Bwana Spika? Tutawafunga wa vijana wetu wote, badala waende shule tutakuwa tunawafunga. Pili, watu waelezewe na hawa watu ambao tunazungumza, hawa civic educators, ya kwamba mambo ya kuweka mahari ya ndoa, ya kuwa ng'ombe nyingi, mbuzi nyingi, ambayo inasababisha wizi, Bwana Spika, iwekwe sheria ya kusema katika sehemu hii isipite ng'ombe 10, katika sehemu hii isipite ng'ombe 3, isipite kuku 4. Bwana Spika, tulete watoto wetu waoane, watu wasiende kuiba ng'ombe ati kwa sababu wanataka kuoa. Watu wapewe nafasi. Kwa hivyo hii sheria lazima iangalie ile shida, na shida ni kwamba kuna mambo ya tamaduni mbaya, na hizi tamaduni hatuwezi kuzimaliza na sheria peke yake. Lazima tuwaelimishe watu, tuwabadilishe akili zao, na tuweke mifano ya vile mambo yangefanywa katika counties. Watu waandikishwe Bwana Spika, ya kwamba kaunti hii mzee akiitisha ng'ombe 100 akamatwe, akiitisha mbuzi 50 akamatwe. Watu waanze kujua ya kwamba kuweka mahari ya juu inaleta mambo ya wizi wa ng'ombe na mbuzi, kwa sababu hizi ndizo shida ambazo tunajaribu kuzitatua Bwana Spika. Wasichana wetu hawa wache waende bwana, ikifika miaka wache waende, hata ukikaa nao wataibiwa tu, wataenda, watazalishwa. Kwa hivyo tusiweke mahari ya juu, kila kaunti iweke mahari ya kutosha kidogo kwa kila kaunti. Watu wasiingizwe moyo wa kuiba, kwa sababu vijana wataiba Bwana Spika. If kama mimi nataka kuoa Bwana Spika na nimempenda, na yule mzee ananiambia ni lazima nitoe ng'ombe 300, nimesikia kama South Sudan ng'ombe 300 Bwana Spika, na msichana nampenda, nitaiba ng'ombe mimi hata kama kuna sheria ya Cherargei. So ndio tunasema afadhali pia Cherargei angalie katika hii sheria, aweke maneno ya kusema katika kila county zile mahari zikuwe standardized. Tusipate shida ya vijana wetu kufungwa kwa ajili ya mambo kama haya. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi nimetoa tu hilo wazo, mheshimiwa angalie vile anaweza kuikarabati hii sheria, ili tuangalie namna ya kuwaelimisha watu wetu watoke kwa tabia potofu, waingie katika miaka ambayo tunaishi. Asante Bwana Spika, na ninaunga mkono.
Senator Eddie Okech.
Madam Speaker, I thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to contribute a few thoughts on this fantastic bill by Senator of Nandi, Senator Cherargei. I hope that he did not bring this motion just for the sake of trying to help, people who are affected by cattle rustling, but I hope that he himself is also a farmer, because he has been talking too much about being a lawyer, and he might forget that farming has been very important. So today we can establish that Senator Cherargei is indeed a farmer more than being a lawyer. But that said, Madam Speaker, I must also say that cattle rustling has been with us for a long time. There used to be times that, cattle rustling was seen essentially as a means of wealth transfer, and in some areas it was accommodated. But within our borders today, Madam Speaker, we must say that indeed it has become a menace that is very, very serious. It's now causing loss of lives. Now, if somebody owns cattle in this country, Madam Speaker, and I see it not only in the areas around the North Rift or in the Sahel region, but even from where I come from in Migori County, if you look at the communities of Kuria and the community of Luos, particularly those who are of the Abasuba origin, called the Suna, in Suna West and Kuria West, this has been an ongoing confrontation around cattle rustling, whereby people have now moved from a mere form of wealth exchange to a form of now serious crime. And this is something that must be addressed because, Madam Speaker, if you look at what is happening now, it looks like owning a cattle has become a serious threat to life. You know, it is dangerous to own any cattle. Because if you own any cattle, it means that you can be attacked at your home, you can be maimed, and you can be killed for just owning a cattle when somebody comes to pick it. So indeed, this is a very, very great bill that I think that this House should support and be able to deal with the issue of cattle rustling. But Madam Speaker, I think that there is also a sense with which this bill, I think, can be improved, because Senator Cherargei, through Madam Speaker, I must say that we must not be tempted to sometimes, institutionalize crime. Because if we propose, for instance, in clause 4, that talks about branding of livestock, and it's an elaborate process, Madam Speaker. We are basically encouraging people of bad manners who are actually just criminals who are going to take people's animal without realizing that this is a crime. Because if you make it so difficult for a farmer to actually hold cattle, because I'm looking at this idea of branding, Madam Speaker, I find it a little bit elaborate and very, very detailed. I mean, it's a great idea, but in terms of implementation, one, it can be very expensive. And number two, it can also be, difficult for some farmers to be able to actually, follow it to the latter. Because, people like those who come from where Cherargei comes from, they are very serious farmers. These are not people who hold some 2 or 10 cattle. These are people who can hold like 100 to 500 cattle. So I'm imagining if you were to hold 100 to 500 cattle and you are supposed to brand the entire herd. However conspicuous as I think is proposed in clause 4, however conspicuous this can be, I think, Madam Speaker, can be very tedious. Also considering that the reason why people hold their cattle is a means of wealth or asset keeping. So that at any given time when people want to take their kids to school, when they have got emergencies, when they want to build homes in these particular communities, they can then very fast sell the animal. So I'm wondering if somebody, for instance, in Migori County, who comes from Muriri constituency, wants to go to Oria Market, which is just at the border of Homa Bay and Migori County, Madam Speaker, wants to sell their cattle, and then they've gone with it to the market. So what happens when somebody from Homa Bay in Mbita constituency or Ndiwa constituency, especially where Senator Beatrice comes from, they like buying cattle from this particular market called Oria, and they go with it all the way to Kaboch. What happens if you now put an infrastructure whereby, however conspicuous it is, you brand this animal again? And then before you realize, the next day it will be in Kindu Bay, and then now they want to sell to somebody from Nyakach, which is now in Kisumu constituency. Then again, now the cattle has gone to Kisumu. It has to be rebranded. I think the branding element can be rethought, and this is where I will help the Senator of Nandi think about some economical ways of doing this rebranding proposal. It's a good one to be able to trace, register animals, and on all this, but we should not make it expensive and also difficult for farmers, considering that some of these farmers are also rudimentary. They have got zebu animals that they are keeping that are not perhaps sometimes the improved breeds like the Saiwal, or even the most prominent breeds like Fresian. So we still have these zebus that are very many in our communities that sometimes branding can be a very difficult thing to do. So that is something I think that as a lot of improvement that can be done, Senator Cherargei. And then the second thing is just the idea around policing. I think we can improve the idea around policing, because this policing system must be embedded within the grassroots community. When you think about things like Nyumba Kumi initiatives that have been there, I'm looking at livestock as a critical component of agriculture. And agriculture has been devolved. And because it has been devolved, part 2 is really dedicated to look at the functionality and the role of the cabinet secretary. And you look at it, the coordination and the development of intergovernmental relations in terms of mechanism to deliver services, as well as the movement of cattle that is in the part 3 of this particular bill, and especially clause 12 that talks about the movement of cattle, Madam Speaker. I think this is whereby we can be able to be more innovative and take the genius of devolution and look at how can devolution really help us to police and monitor the movement of cattle. I feel like this bill tends to take some of these functions or makes it possible for the cabinet secretary at the national level to almost take control over this function. I think if you look at it critically, the only element that this can be able to help with is the element of security, because security is not devolved. And because security is not devolved, that we can rethink some model of engineering a local community policing and mechanism and monitoring mechanism of this movement, other than giving the national government this particular function that at the end of the day does not become as effective as if this particular function of policing system or monitoring system of security could be put within counties and be able to empower counties to do. I think if you figure out those two, then the essence of offenses that has been articulated by Senator Cherargei on the offenses in part 4, I think clause 16, 17, and 18, they're brilliant offenses that have been articulated there that then end up talking very seriously about criminalizing the element of cattle rustling and basically thuggery of stealing people's animal. But I think it will be effective if you combine this with the local policing system, local monitoring system, other than taking this function more pronounced, in a more pronounced way to agriculture ministries at the national level. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say also that as I finish, there sometimes need to be a time when us as a country, we are called to solve the root causes of problems. And I really like what Senator Mungatana has talked about, the element of extreme poverty and economic emptiness among our communities that has always forced young people to find other ways of survival and other modes of survival. And some of these are criminal activities. It is important that as a people and as a house, we can be able to constantly emphasize that the activities that constitute cattle rustling are just as criminal activities as any other criminal activities within our country. Because if we emphasize on that, then I will be very proud to support this bill so that the offenses that has been articulated, especially in part 4 of this particular bill, and I'm looking at clause 18, 4, subsection 4, that gives very serious charges on people who have committed some offenses, that they should be taken very seriously and be punished very seriously when you are found to having done these criminal activities. But before we even get there, it is important that the Senator of Nandi also is able to encourage the government of the day to just think about critically investing in the economic modes of local communities. We saw the other day when fertilizer was hugely subsidized in the concept of subsidizing production, but we did not see any farm inputs that were subsidized in the same fashion in the livestock department. Mr. Speaker, you can actually see that as important as the Senator of Nandi has emphasized on the role that livestock plays in agriculture, there is need to subsidize agricultural feeds for animals, so that people who are rearing these animals are not faced with challenges like we have seen conflicts around pasture, people fighting over pasture. And now it has also even caused what we will call wildlife versus the pastoralist conflict. In places like Kitui, you see that kind of conflict coming because there is no subsidy around this feed for animal. So in as much as we want to invest in only crop-based agriculture, the government must also start looking at how do you invest in animal-based agriculture so that you suppress the pressure that some of these communities have that they want to supplement by some activities of thuggery and going to steal some people's animal because theirs have died, or go and steal some people's animal because they don't have the capabilities of producing their own fodder. This is very, very important. But otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I want to really, really congratulate my brother and now the farmer, the prolific farmer senator, the senator of Nandi, for bringing this bill. And I hope that it can be more objective so that we can be able to revisit it, so that when it comes to subsequent readings, we can be able to explore some areas that we can be able to tighten and make cattle rustling history in the borders of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support the bill with amendments that will be moved forward together with Senator Cherargei.
Guess what? It's your good friend and loyal partner, Claudio.